Hey everybody, this is Danielle Miller with the Empower Brand Show, and today I am so delighted to bring to you a friend and colleague that I've known for a very long time. I have with me today Felicia Slattery, and Felicia is on a mission to motivate, inspire, and train smart business owners in using public speaking to create meaningful connections. I think that's the best way to describe it, how you describe it, right, Felicia?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hi. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic.
Awesome. You are an internationally acclaimed speaker and training consultant. And one of the things that I know is so central to your message is in being a survivor and taking that message and using it to tell your story in a really powerful and meaningful way. And that's one of the things I really want to dive into today with you. So tell me a little bit more about who you are.
Okay. Well, I am a speaker. That's the first kind of thing that I've been doing since I was 7, actually, in front of big groups of people. So that's super fun and really been my whole life. And when my second daughter was born, it was kind of an emergency situation, and so after I recovered from that, it took about a year, and she was fine, and I, eventually was fine, and it was all good at the end. But I kind of looked around and said, all right, I'm still here. Why did I not die? Right, I'm here for a reason, and the truth is, we're all here for a reason. That just made me really think about more why, and so I started my business at that point. It was 2006. And I wanted to be home with my girls, who were 1 and 3 at the time, and that's when I kind of started doing this thing from home. And I have been teaching people how to speak, to market their businesses and build professional speaking businesses really since that time. And the reason that I gravitated toward that pretty easily was because every job I ever had involved me standing in front of audiences. I used to be a college professor of public speaking and communication, so it was a natural, easy fit for me to just keep doing the same thing, but do it for home and do it for business professionals. So that's kind of my short story. Oh, and you mentioned Survivor. A couple of years ago, actually right this minute, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. And we called it a cut and paste job because, as far as I knew, I only had it for 3 weeks. And we just cut out the bad stuff, and they sealed me back up. And I never needed chemo. I never needed radiation. And I kind of had my own personal miracle. I tell that story on stage, but basically, the kind that I ended up with was never killed anybody, never spread, and never came back. So I'm doing great. 2 years post, totally healed and recovered and doing my thing.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's really interesting how your journey has evolved. And what would you say have been the biggest evolutions in your brand?
The biggest evolutions in my brand really came from, so in the very early days, I thought I was a life coach, which is funny. And I took life coach training and I had all that. But I really am at heart a teacher. And I know you are too. And so I followed down that I'm a life coach path for about 10 months or so. And then I made the shift when somebody said, why aren't you just teaching speaking? And I was like, well, everybody knows that. So the first part of my evolution was, obviously the very first part was, hey, I'm going to do this thing for a living. The second part was clarifying really what my gifts are that I could bring to folks. And then over the years, the biggest evolutions and biggest changes have come, honestly, from events and from the various people that I've just been blessed to be able to work with and know, you, for example, and some really cool smart coaches that I've worked with over the years, classes that I've taken, books that I've read, just I think kind of the standard path that a lot of folks take. And also, I'm not afraid to go out there and just do something and mess it up in a big, huge way. So I think that's probably something that's also served me, because I know what I do well. I don't necessarily know all the other stuff. So I just try a bunch of different things, and what works I keep doing, and what doesn't I just let that fall by the wayside.
That's awesome. And I think that that's such an important component, such a vital element really of being an entrepreneur, is not being afraid to try things that are, maybe outside of your comfort zone, or things that you're not familiar with, to see if it's a good fit for you. And which is a perfect segue to talk about public speaking, because I think obviously if you are a coach or a consultant, or you have a personal brand that you really want to get out there, public speaking, of course, is a way to amplify your message and to build your platform. So how does someone get started in that?
So it depends on where you are in your evolution. And the first way to get started is to actually know that this is something you want to do. Mm-hmm. If you're going to go in kicking and screaming, then don't do it. There's a ton of other ways to reach out to people and use your voice, do videos, or do hangouts, or do something else. But so the first step is realizing, yeah, this is really powerful, and this is something I really want to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is then get trained. And whether you get the training from me or somebody else, mine is the best, I'm just going to say.
Of course it is. That's why I have you on the show today.
Thank you. But get trained from somebody who knows what they're doing, because you can actually hurt your brand more than you help it when you go out and make a bunch of mistakes. So yes, it's okay to be not afraid to make mistakes. And if you're going to do something, you might as well learn the right way to do it, and there's no lack of classes, of products, of programs, of services that'll help you do that. I mean, I've got a ton of free stuff available. Danielle and I are going to talk about a class we're going to be teaching later on. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that you can do to learn. But really learn what some of the mistakes are, learn what you definitely want to be doing. Make sure you avoid some of the things that people do that just really sink their ship before they even take off, So anyway, so those would be some other things. And then once you're ready, once you're learning, here's a couple of things you want to do. Number one, know your audience really well. Who are the people you can best serve with your message, with your business, with your product, with your service? Get very clear on that. I find that folks who are coaches and consultants, they tend to be real broad, and we need to narrow. Because when you write any speech, really any form of communication, you want to be writing it to one person. So get real clear on who that one person is, that ideal person that you can serve. Then once you're done with that, now you can put together the message. And the easiest way to put together your message is to figure out what are the most frequently asked questions that you get from people who are like your ideal target market. Okay? Not from your family. We don't, unless your family is your ideal target market, right? Not from the parents of, your kids at school, not those people, right? You want the people who are in your market. What do they ask you when you tell them you're whatever it is? So put together 3 to 5 of those questions and the answers to those, and be willing to share and give as much as you can in the given time that you're allotted. You may be given 15 minutes, which is a very short end. Usually you're closer to 30 to 45 minutes of a presentation. So whatever time you're given, then answer those questions and feel free to share useful stuff. Don't be one of those, well, if I could tell you how to blah, 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 wouldn't you love if you could learn how to? Well, you can get that if you sign up for my thing that you have to buy. Right. They came to hear you, right? So share with them some information that for you might be off the top of your head, but for somebody else might be like, ooh, this is really good stuff. I need to know this stuff, right?
That's right.
So anyway, so know your questions. And then finally, one of the biggest mistakes that I see folks making is they don't have a strong call to action at the end. So they'll go out and they'll speak and they'll say, thank you very much. And then they sit down. And
that's it.
People don't know, well, how do I get a hold of you? Or, well, if I want to learn more, what do I do? Or they'll say, for more information, see me later, or whatever. That's not a strong call to action. A strong call to action is, I have this free thing. I'd love for you to sign up for it. Here's how you sign up for it. I have a class that I teach, and this is the name of the class, and this is when we teach it, or this is how you get access to that. Or I have my books, and they're right here. So I'll be selling them in the back of the room, and you can buy them today for $10 or whatever, right? A very clear path that you want your audience members to take next, so that they can continue to interact with you. You've got to have that strong call to action at the end. That's pretty much the signature speech in a really tiny nutshell.
In a nutshell. And you know, you've already covered so many points that, I mean, we could take each of those and have an HOA show about that. But I want to go back to that whole call to action thing. Why do you think people are afraid or they don't do that?
I think people don't necessarily even know that they should be making a call to action. A lot of times folks are afraid to make the call to action because they don't want to offend someone in the group. Well, they had me come in and speak. They had me come in and speak, and I don't want anybody to get mad at me for selling something. But let me tell you what, when we go to free things, when we go to whether it's a free live event in the community or a free virtual event online, we all know how it works.
Right.
I mean, you deserve to get paid for what you're doing. So whether you get paid on the front end or you get paid on the back end, you deserve to get paid. And so you've got to tell the audience why. So I think that because people are a little worried, like, I don't want to offend anybody, well, the people who are offended, they're going to hang up or they're going to click away or they're going to stop paying attention or they're going to on their iPhone or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So that's less than 5% of the people in the room. The rest of the folks, if you've provided useful, valuable information, I think one of the other challenges is, Danielle, that people are not always confident in what they're sharing. They're not confident in how they're sharing it. And so to make an offer out of lack of confidence, they just decide they're not going to do it because they're afraid of what might or might not happen. A lot of people are scared. Well, what if I make an offer and nobody buys anything? Then I'm going to look like an idiot up here because I've offered something and now nobody's going to come over, right? So it's better if I don't offer anything. Or they don't, or they think they don't have something to offer. So, well, I don't have classes and products and programs. I haven't been doing this thing since 2006 like you have, Felicia, so I don't have anything to offer. Well, if you're standing in front of people and you were invited to speak, the event planner thinks you have something to offer, that you have at least information of value. So at the very least, you've got coaching or consulting that you can do for folks. You don't have to be a certified coach. You can be a consultant and share your knowledge and say, hey, I happen to know more about this. If you want to know, a lot about this, if you want to know more, let's talk. And here's how we can talk. And then again, be strong about that offer. So lots of different reasons why people don't make that offer at the end. But, a lot of it just comes down to not really being sure of who they are and what they have to share with the world.
That's really great information. And I think you hit on something really key there, and that is about not valuing what you have to offer or thinking that it's not it's worth something, but that you don't want to attach a monetary value on it. I think we get so caught up in that sometimes that it can really paralyze us. And on a really quick side note, I noticed in the chat there that somebody was, David, I think you were having trouble with the Applause HOA extension. I didn't know I even had that installed. So I apologize if you're not able to, if it keeps crashing on you. I think I closed it, so I think it should be okay now. If not, let me know and I'll fool with it a little bit more. The joys of hosting a live HOA show where anything can happen. Yay!
Live online internet.
That's right, and it's all good. Again, I'm still learning this, and I readily admit I'm still learning this whole process. But I think it is such an amazing platform, and I've been really enjoying my time with it. So let's get back to the topic at hand. And when I was talking about knowing your value and being able to recognize that is worth something monetarily, and being okay with offering that. You said something that I thought was really interesting, and that most of your audience they know that you're there to make money. They know that you do this for a living, and if it's done in a genuine way, then people don't have a problem with that. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you've got to do it in line with who you are, right? Who you are as a person. So what works for me may not work for you. What works for somebody else may not work for you. You've got to present your information in a way that says that's coming from you. Mm-hmm. And are there organizational patterns? Are there ways to present it so that it's easy for the audience to understand? Absolutely. That's what public speaking is all about.
Right.
And once you kind of get those basics down, now you've got to let your own self shine through. And I've found that over the years, when I've seen somebody else's closing technique, or I've tried to use somebody else's, special whiz-bang thing that they're doing at the end of a presentation, if my audience realizes it's not me, I get far fewer people interested than if I'm just who I'm going to be. And actually, can we take this down this path of talking about, because you talk about archetypes, and I know I've got some of my folks who are listening today, and would you just tell folks a little bit about the archetypes thing, because I think this is a good point to bring it up, because when you present from who you are, your audience is going to be able to connect with you better, and the archetypes is a way to know that. Is that right?
That's right. That's exactly correct, and that's a perfect segue to start delving into that a little bit, because the really fascinating thing about archetypes is that they not only help you connect with who you are and the people that you want to talk to on a linguistic level verbally, but they also help you do it in an unconscious, innate way. Because what happens is, when you have identified your leading archetype, you come from a place of alignment and resonance, and you are able to connect with the people you want to connect with in a very genuine way. It is really a shortcut to meaning. It's really a shortcut to making connections with people, because it's done on a very unconscious level. People don't even realize that you're making that connection, and the most powerful brands are able to do this in such a natural way. I mean, think about personal brands that you really resonate with. Maybe you are a huge Martha Stewart fan. Maybe you really relate to a Rachel Ray type person. Maybe you are a secret Harley Davidson addict, and you think about those brands, they stand for something. They stand for a particular concept, a particular idea. Harley Davidson stands for rebellion, living on the edge, being a little bit wild. Martha Stewart is very much a pursuer of excellence and a ruler archetype, take charge.
Okay, so really quick, can you explain what the word archetype means? What is that?
Yes. An archetype is a pattern. It is a collective unconscious. It's an imprint that really is encoded in our DNA. It is the idea that there are these patterns throughout our unconscious collective that we gravitate towards without even knowing it. Without even being aware.
Patterns of like personality traits and behaviors. Is that what you?
It's concepts of meaning. Okay. So power, excellence, being the sort of every person, being wild, being the hero, being the teacher. And there are hundreds of archetypes. I mainly work with 12 archetypes, and they're the subfamilies of those archetypes. So what happens is when you really can connect with your leading archetype, you start to understand the language that archetype uses. You start to realize how you can make connections with people because you understand and can align with that leading archetype. It's so fascinating. So for somebody like you, as a teacher, you have the ability, and one of your greatest gifts is being able to take information and present it in a way that it is accessible for everyone. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think that's really how I've ended up being a speaker, too, is because I am able to take a lot of different things and present them in a way that just makes it more than accessible, easy to understand and easy to take and easy to implement. That's what most of my testimonials really boil down to is, I'm super excited about this because now I get it and I can go do this. So, okay. Yeah, I think that's certainly, and I'm going to be interested to take your archetypes quiz when you're done with it, the assessment that you're working on, because I wonder, like, if that's my first one or if there's another one that's my first one. I don't know. It's going to be super fun.
Right, and that's the thing, because sometimes you think you have an idea of what your main archetype might be. Like, you might hear about it, and you hear about the 12 archetypes, and you think, okay, well, I'm a magician, or I'm a sage, or I'm a jester, or I'm a sovereign, and then you take it, and you get the results, and you think, oh, wow, I never really considered that this could be my leading archetype, but now it makes total sense. So, and the thing about really interesting thing about archetypes is that typically, and I've noticed this with entrepreneurs, is that there's a leading archetype and then there's a couple that are very, very close behind. So I call them leading archetypes and secondary archetypes. So you have the leading one that becomes your amplified voice, and then you have these secondary ones that help you in other areas. So for example, if you are writing a sales page, perhaps you want to approach it from a very informative point of view, and you want to tap in more into your sage archetype as one of your secondary archetypes. Or perhaps you are looking at building when you're writing your speech, whatever that may be about, you want to approach it from one of your secondary archetypes, which may be jester. So you want to do maybe more of a funny, provocative type of speech. It's really a fascinating way to connect inside yourself and connect with others.
Yeah, and you know, some people say to me, well, should I start my speech with a joke? Like, that's always, you know, that's one of the popular questions I get a lot.
Right.
And I never tied it to archetypes before you and I started talking about this, but if this is a perfect example, if you're not innately funny, if you don't, you know, if you wouldn't have a funny bone if somebody came up and smacked you over the head with it, like, don't be using jokes, because it's going to seem weird and it's going to seem stilted and it's going to it's going to feel unusual to you, and the audience is going to be uncomfortable with it as well. So I think they tie together really beautifully when you're thinking about, all right, so understanding what your own archetypes are, so that as you're putting together the content for your presentation, as you're practicing your delivery style, as you're thinking about, well, what am I going to offer and how am I going to offer this thing, knowing who you really are inherently, gosh, it's just going to be so much easier to put it all together. Because once you're clear on that, and you know, because you've got to be clear on two things. You've got to be clear on who your audience is and who you best serve, but you've also got to be clear on who you are and how you can best serve them. What do you bring to the table? And knowing your archetypes can only make that stronger. Is that right?
That's right, absolutely, because it helps you really keep your message very sharp and very clear. It can help you get clarity. It can help you really define the language that you want to use to talk to the right people. So for example, if your leading archetype might be a magician, you know, the whole concept of being a magician is about transformation and reinvention. And so a lot of the language that you would use to attract your right people and to really tailor your message to your audience would revolve around that type of language. And maybe using a story of somebody who really reinvented themselves would help form that connection with the audience. Being able to, you know, take people out of the audience and help them reinvent themselves as a living, you know, a live example, you know, that type of thing can really be a very, very powerful way to make those very emotional connections, because you're really tapping into people's emotions and feelings by using archetypes.
So then, for example, then a magician person who can do that live on the spot, let's take somebody through a transformative experience, should definitely be doing that kind of a demo during your speech, whatever speech you're doing, as opposed to someone who's a jester. That's probably if your leading archetype is that, you don't necessarily want to pull someone out of the audience, because in your brain you'll be cracking jokes about them or about yourself talking to them, as opposed to being able to make that transformative change. So the magician should stick with, let's make this a transformative experience to the audience. The jester should say, let's help this audience learn something by making them laugh while they learn. And it's two different approaches. It could be the same message, it's just two different approaches. So,
that's right. Yeah, the message could be the same, but the really cool thing is when you understand your archetypes, you can really tailor that message to what your strengths are. And when you do that, you come across as very real, as very transparent, and you're able to make those connections. So yeah, that's the really cool thing about it, because somebody who has the jester archetype, they're going to want to probably keep a lighter tone in their speech, in their talk, as opposed to somebody who is more of a sage archetype, and they're really talking about information and how to take complicated ideas and simplify them for their audience. So it's a very powerful way to make those connections.
Awesome. Hey, so we've got a few minutes left. Do we want to talk about the class we're going to teach?
You betcha. That's perfect timing for that. So Felicia and I got together when I wanted to have her on the show to talk about speaking, because it's such an important part of the entrepreneur's repertoire, and she is my go-to girl for all things public speaking. And I said to her, I said it would be really interesting to approach this public speaking with an archetypal point of view. In other words, helping people figure out what their primary archetypes are and how they could use those to really align their message in their public speaking. And Felicia's like, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, and it's super powerful too.
Yes.
Because again, once you know who you are, and I think probably the biggest challenge that I've seen a lot of people, I'm a member of the Facebook NSA group, the National Speakers Association group on Facebook, and because I like to see what are people talking about in there, what are the other professional speakers sharing, and some of the newer folks ask the same kinds of questions, which by the way you'll find with your market as well. So you should kind of be hanging out and looking at what are the people asking, and one of the big questions just even the last couple days was, well, how do I avoid telling the same old stories or the same stories I've seen other people tell that I think are really good stories? Like, well, how do I do that? There's a lot of information in there about that. But when you know your archetype, it's really easy to develop your own voice, because you just tap into who that is, and then the stories just come and they start to flow when you look at yourself through this lens of the archetype thing, which is why I wanted to do that. So Danielle, do you want to pull up
Yep.
Can you pull up the screen share thing on that?
Yep. So Felicia and I have come up with a 3-session class, and let's see here. We're going to share. I'm going to share that screen. I'm going to go away for a little bit. And you can see it is a public speaking and archetypes class. So we're going to be, you can see the link is there. And Felicia, why don't you talk a little bit more about that, what we're going to be covering in the class.
Yes. So let's talk about that. There's a lot. We're covering a lot of kind of cool stuff in the class. It's going to be 3 sessions. Each session will be about an hour or so, depending on how long it takes us to deliver the information we promise. And the first session, basically what we're going to do is we're going to talk about archetypes, and we're going to cover the meaning, then we're going to cover your message, and then we're going to talk about how you can monetize that. And those are the 3 sessions. So the first session is all about meaning, where we're going to go into, you'll be some of the first people to get Danielle's hot new archetype brand discovery tool assessment. And you'll get your assessment so that you can define your voice and also the vibe of your brand, of your specific brand, what you bring to the table. So you'll know, are you a sage? Are you a magician? Are you a jester? And also, what are your secondary traits? So that you can make sure that you include those as well as you're planning your presentations. You'll identify some key language that's going to be resonant with your audience, so that you can create lasting connections that are authentic and real to who you are. Then the second session, we're going to talk about how you can dig through the stories of your own life experiences to find out the meaning and the message in each of those stories. Because when you get up to speak, and honestly, when you do any kind of marketing, people love coming to stories. We're interested in that story. And so you've got to learn how to tell your stories. And then how do you take that story and relate the meaning? I started off today, if you were here earlier at the beginning of our hangout here, And I just told the quick story about how my daughter, you know, came into the world and it was a kind of rush emergency situation and things weren't great about that. So I told that story a little bit. But the moral of that story was, I'm still here, and by the way, we're all still here. You don't have to have gone through that, right? I shared that at the beginning. What's your story that teaches the lesson, the moral, that's a bigger lesson in moral? So I'll teach you how to find those. And in fact, we'll talk about the top 7 morals to your stories that audiences just love. And it's going to keep people completely engaged with you. Because when they're engaged with you, they're not disengaged doing something else. And then the exact steps to take to craft your own personal message in a way that allows people to see you as truly different, so you stand out. And then finally, the third session is all about, all right, so now you know your archetype, and you've got your message, how are you going to make money? Right? So how are we going to take your stories that you developed from session 2 and use them in presentations, in videos, in social media, in Hangouts, and use them in ways that are going to attract buyers? How you can use your own voice to effectively market yourself, and you're speaking effortlessly so that you stand out among the crowd. You're not going to be just another one of the people in the Me Too-ness land. You're going to be different because you know who you are, and when you know who you are and you communicate from that area of who you are, people are automatically attracted to that. And then there's going to be no question left unanswered in that final session. Anything that we haven't answered that you wanted to know up until that point, we'll stay on as long as you need us to and answer all those questions for you. So we've built these sessions to, we've planned them to build one upon the other. Mm-hmm. And if you're on the page, you can see some of the folks that have worked with us in the past.
Right. And I also wanted to say the link is there in the chat box as well. So if you didn't catch it on the screen share, it's there in the chat box. And we're going to be offering, did you, Felicia, you cut out on me for about 20 seconds. Did you talk about the fast action bonus?
I didn't.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about that. So if you are on the chat today, we wanted to do something special for you because you've taken the time to hang out with us, and we know how valuable your time is, so we wanted to give you something of value as well. So if you sign up for the class, we're going to also give you 20 minutes with each of us to define and refine what your message is. So we'll talk about, you'll get 20 minutes with me, and we'll talk about your archetypes, how you can use them to help you craft your message, and then I'm going to turn you over to Felicia, and then she's going to talk more about how you can build that message in your speaking.
Yep. Yeah, and it's kind of a really cool 1-2 punch. So when you register for the program, you get both of us. And Danielle will help you clarify that brand, that message through your archetype, and then I'll help you figure out, well, all right, now where do we put it in the speech and create the speech together. And so, I just want you to think about for a minute, how much does it cost you to not be doing these things? How much does it cost you to not, not know your unique voice? When you think about, even for the newest speakers of the world, you can be asking for anywhere from $2,000 to $2,500 up to $5,000 if you can show potential meeting planners that you do have something unique to bring to the table. That's what this class will help you be able to do. Sponsors, both Danielle and I have had sponsors pay us cash. Sponsors are willing to pay you easily $1,000 or more, up into the tens of thousands of dollars, when you're clear about who you best serve, and that is in line with who the sponsors want to reach. So again, being clear about your archetype, being clear about who you are, about your message, that will help you open the door to sponsorship. And then sales of your products, of your books, of your consulting, of your coaching, all of these things, they just come so much more easily. So what's the first time value of a private coaching client? Is it $500? Is it $1,000? Is it $10,000? Think about that. And think about if you get one new client from this process or one speaking gig from this process, is it worth it? Absolutely. So, I mean, we could easily be charging 5 times what we are for this. In fact, we did talk about, like, maybe we should do more, do it for more. But we decided we're going to do it for $97. one-time payment. The 3 sessions, you'll get access to everything. If you can't make the 3 dates, the dates are on the page, so make sure you click on the link. But we're starting on Wednesday, September 24th, and there are 3 consecutive Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, which is noon Central. That's my time. That's 10 a.m. Pacific, and wherever else you are in the world, you have to look it up because I can't do the math. So anyway, I am not, whatever the math archetype is, that's not me. So anyway, if you're
I know there is a math archetype.
I believe it because that's not me. You couldn't get, I'm probably like polar opposite of that person. But anyway, if you're going to miss any of those sessions, that's fine. We'll be recording everything. You'll get access to all the slides, all the audio, the video, the notes, everything, so you won't be left out. And you can listen to it as many times as you like. Even if you can join us, that's fine. You get access to everything. We'll have a Facebook group, private Facebook group just for our folks who are going through the program, so that we can communicate with each other and everybody else in the program in between sessions, so that as you develop and get to know yourself through your archetype and develop your unique voice and your unique message and put together your presentation, you'll have that support of the group. So that's what we got for you. What do you think, Danielle?
I think it's pretty good, actually. And one thing I do want to say is, think about all the workshops and events and things you've been to where there have been public speakers and you have heard the same message delivered in the same way, and you can tell that the speaker up there is doing something that's not very natural for them, that's doing something that probably somebody told them they should do it this way and follow this particular blueprint or formula on speaking, and you can tell that there's not that critical engagement and connection with the audience. And I'm telling you, when you understand your archetype and you lean into it, that all goes away.
Because you build rapport from the place of who you are.
That's right.
And that rapport with the audience, honestly, at that point, you can make some blunders along the way, and they'll forgive you because they see you're there being you.
That's right.
And it's really people have always asked me, the reason that when Danielle and I were talking, I was like, yeah, we should definitely do something together, is people have always asked me, well, how are you the same everywhere? How are you the same on social media and the same on stage and the same if we're talking face to face? Like, how are you always the same? And I always just say, well, because it's who I am. And I've done a ton of different personality assessments, and like I taught communication at the university level, so this is my thing. I've been into this. I've just never called it archetypes or studied the archetypes. And when Danielle started to tell me about this, I was like, oh, this is it. This is how it's easy for me to be who I am everywhere. And if you struggle with that, which a lot of people do, they struggle, well, what persona am I going to show online versus the persona that I have on stage versus the real me, who I am. Like, the learning and understanding your archetype, it comes forth from your personality. Just is easy, and it just flows simply from that.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. And here's the thing, and here's just another thing to think about really quickly, is how many times have you connected with somebody online, or you followed somebody online, and then you see them at an event and they are so not who you thought they were. Felicia, you're laughing, and it gives me a chuckle too, because it's just amazing to me. And I've seen comments from people so many times, oh, I went and saw so-and-so at an event, and oh my gosh, they are so not, like they are online. And, this is not about that. This is about really owning who you are, your gifts and your strengths, and using them to tell your story.
Yep. So if you want to do that, Danielle and I want to help you. So join us in our class.
Yeah, we do. We do want to help you. And it will be a lot of fun. We both like to have a good time. We both have some of that jester, provocateur archetype in us. And that's another thing. We all have different varying degrees of the archetypes in us. I mean, they are there. It's not like you don't have any jester in you. But if it's not a natural gift that you have of being lighthearted and being able to have a quick wit, that's okay. That's so okay. There are so many other ways that you can tap into your gifts and show them and make connections with people.
Definitely.
So, So we look forward to seeing you in the class. If you did not make it on the live show today, the replay will be up on the sales page, so you can watch all of it. You can get all the information. You can get a taste of Felicia and I and see if you are wanting to join the program with us. It's going to be short and sweet, but full of lots of really great information. So we're looking forward to seeing you there. If you have any questions about the class, feel free to contact me on any social media platform. You know where I am. You guys know that I'm pretty much out and about everywhere.
Felicia, feel free.
Yeah, and Felicia as well, because she is also active on various social media platforms as well. So if you have questions, please ask us. We're happy to help you. We're happy to talk to you about it, find out if this program is a good fit for you, and we look forward to seeing you in the class.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Felicia. So appreciate having you on today, and I'm looking forward to teaching with you.
Me too. I'm looking forward to working with you too.
All right, everybody, have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of your time. I'm going to put the link to the green room in the chat, so if anybody wants to jump in with us, if you have questions now and you want to ask that, Felicia, you feel free to jump off whenever you want to, but I'll hang around so that if anybody has any questions, we'll get them answered for you.
Sounds good. I'll stick with you in a couple minutes.
Okay, great, awesome. All right, thanks so much, gang. We'll see you next week.